Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 486 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as always by former heavyweight world title challenger, the main man himself, Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, my man. How about you?
Always good when speaking with you, Eddie. That is the truth. We're going to dive straight into the review part. I don't think the review part's going to last very long. It was just the one card to mention, the one that went down at the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester, Lancashire, United Kingdom. It was live on TNT as one of TNT's final Queensbury boxing shows. Obviously, we've all seen the news. Frank Warren and Queensbury are going to be signing an exclusive exclusive TV deal with DAZN, so they won't be on TNT for much longer. So one of their last cards, and this show was entitled The Last Dance because we were sold that Chisora would be having his last fight, and obviously we knew I think that it was never going to end on just 49 fights. He definitely wants to go for the 50th, and we saw that in the ring afterwards. Let's just jump straight to the main event, which I don't often do, but because we've mentioned Chisora there, we may as well. Derek Chisora now 36-13, a unanimous decision over 12 rounds against the very, very unimpressive and disappointing Otto Wallin, now 27-3. Otto Wallin, I mean, so disappointing from him, man, honestly. You know, him and Chisora's had 20 more fights than Wallin, right? 20 more fights. And the way that they looked the other night, it looked like Wallin was the guy with loads of miles on his clock. Just so disappointing from him. He was the favourite as well. Like, the bookies really felt, just like I felt, that he would be, in many ways, all wrong for Chisora if he was able to use his legs. However, he was so poor the other night. I mean, so poor, very slow. He would kind of poke a jab out, and Chisora would just duck underneath the jab and pop up right on top of him, and then he didn't know what to do. Like, didn't bring the uppercut into play at any point when that did happen. He was just being mauled by Chisora, really. Some really questionable scorecards from the judges. But anyway, Chisora was cut really badly over his right eye from a head clash. They did well in the corner with that cut there. Otto Wallin down in the 9th round and also in the 12th round. I don't even know what to say. I mean, Chisora completely dominated Wallin, and it wasn't because Chisora was brilliant, in my opinion, even though he's being applauded now with this, this career best performance talk. I felt that Wallin was just so bad, and based off of that the other night, quite honestly, I'd like to see Wallin fight someone like Moses Itama. I think Moses Itama would just destroy him in a round or two. Wallin is just completely done. And I've always been a Wallin fan. I think he's a nice guy, but he offered absolutely nothing the other night. Nothing. He's bigger than Chisora. He's more skilled than Chisora. He's got less miles on the clock than Chisora. And if he would have won that fight, I'm sure the money was good as well, coming to the UK and boxing Del Boy in Manchester. I'm sure the money was good. But if he would have won that fight, he could have, jumped into another big fight right after that, because he is, quite a big name guy in the heavyweight division, really. Boxed Anthony Joshua, boxed Tyson Fury, and boxed Del Boy Chisora here. So it seems like he can't beat an Englishman. But anyway, really, really poor from Wallin. I actually don't really want to see him again unless he's jumping in with a guy that needs a little bit of testing, like Moses Atalma, like I say. You think about Wallin going in with the likes of Daniel Dubois. I mean, he would crush him like a Coke can, I think. As for Chisora, I mean, he was made to look fantastic, I suppose. I don't really buy it too much, but you can't really fault him. He did what he had to do in that ring. He did, implement, I guess, tactics that Wallin really struggled with. It's not like Wallin came to lose and just came for a paycheck. No way. He was awful, though, god awful. And credit to Chisora. He's won, his last couple of fights being big underdog, and you can't really discredit him for that. I've never been a Chisora fan, by the way. I know that, again, he seems to be like this sort of, I don't know, cult hero. He'll fight anyone, and he will fight anyone. Obviously, he's shown it time and time again. He's got a crazy resume. Most of those names on the resume that are noteworthy are losses, but he still will fight anyone. But I don't think Chisora is a particularly nice person, and I've never been a big fan of his at all. I just hasn't really made me a fan of his at all. And I'm a big supporter of British boxing, but for me, he's just never really done it for me, Del Boy. On the undercard, we saw Masood Abdullah lose his O. He's now 11-1. It was for the vacant British and also the Commonwealth featherweight titles. Abdullah cut over his right eye. His opponent, Zach Miller, the underdog, quite a big underdog. I was actually going to tip this in my boxing betting group, and I completely forgot on the day. Zach Miller was 6-1 to win the fight on points. That was the bet I wanted to make, and he did end up winning it on points. A majority decision over 12 rounds. I felt it was going to be a really interesting fight. Like I said on last week's show, he gave a great account against Nathaniel Collins. And Masood Abdullah, he's exciting but relatively untested, and I felt that Zach Miller's quite a fit fighter and could cause issues, and he did, like I say, and springs the upset. A few head clashes though, and a few cuts for both guys. Moving down the undercard once again, really good performance from Jack Rafferty, who was sporting cornrows as well. He's now 25-0. He extends that win streak. He's already got the most wins of any British boxer right now in terms of a win streak, 25-0. There's not another British fighter who's 25-0 or beyond without at least a draw or a loss. So yeah, Jack Rafferty moved to 25-0, like I say. TKO in the 7th against Reece McMillan, now 17-2. That one for the British, the Commonwealth and the WBC International Silver Super Lightweight titles. McMillan's corner threw the towel in. Really good performance from Jack Rafferty, quite clinical. And on paper, it was supposed to be a tough fight for him. A really good performance, actually, and on a good stage, because he hasn't really been on the big shows. And hopefully this is, him kind of moving into that more well-known area of the sport, I guess. It was good exposure for him. Also on the card, Zach Parker, now 26-1, friend of the show. As everyone knows, I'm a big Zach Parker fan, not just of him as a boxer, but also of him as a man. Very nice guy, Zach Parker. Got a hell of a lot of time for his manager, Neil Marsh. I mean, that's one of my closest guys in boxing, but yeah, Zach Parker with the win. It wasn't the prettiest. Both boxers cut on their right eye. A unanimous decision over 10 for Zach Parker against France's Mikel Diallo, now 21-2 with 2 draws. It was obviously a late replacement. On fight week, Willie Hutchinson pulled out. I think it was fight week. It may have been the week before. But late replacement. Frenchman came in. He could punch. And it's always a bit of a struggle when you're completely preparing for a totally different fighter than what you're going to get on fight night. You don't get many days to adjust. So I think we all need to cut Zach a little bit of slack for that. However, it's been a few performances in recent times from Zach Parker that have all kind of looked a little bit similar. I think that's fair to say. At one point in his career, when he was rising through the ranks, he was just looking phenomenal. And I remember they were talking about him fighting Demetrius Andrade, and I was hoping that fight would get made. In the end, I think Demetrius Andrade pulled out the fight. But at one point, that was a fight where I would have probably favoured Zach Parker, because he was so impressive the way he came through the ranks. And his last few performances, last couple of years of his career, I don't know what's missing, but something's missing, and that excitement has kind of faded away. We spoke to him a few weeks ago, and like I said in that interview, I said that he's lost a little bit of momentum, and this was another win, but another kind of example of losing momentum despite winning fights. No one wants to see him fight in his next fight. There were countless people on Twitter criticising, saying that they'd never want to see him box again, which is very harsh. But like I say, I think we do need to cut him a little bit of slack. The opponent change is just not ideal. And I think we would have seen a better fight if it were Willie Hutchinson in the opposite corner the other night. But it wasn't Zach's fault at all that fight didn't end up happening, and he did come in really good shape. Zach looked fantastic actually, in terms of his shape and stuff like that, but again, not ideal for him, and it's done him harm actually, which is a real shame. Also on the card, Nathan Heaney, now 18-2 with a draw. He lost another upset, a TKO in the 7th. Nathan Heaney down in that round, very, very hurt from being down, and usually when we've seen him go down in the past, he gets back up, and obviously his conditioning is fantastic. He's a very fit guy, usually recovers quite quickly, but this time when he was knocked down by Sofian Kati, who is now 18-5, he got back up and you could see his legs were not recovered at all. And again, one thing you cannot doubt in Heaney is his heart. He's got a massive heart. He tried to fight back and it wasn't clever, and he wasn't really thinking about what was clever. He was just thinking about trying to inflict some damage back on his opponent, and like I say, he kept getting caught, and that was it. So yeah, really sad to see for Nathan Heaney. It's been a tough couple of years again for him. The Brad Pauls saga, now this. It's 2 losses back to back now after being undefeated, after beating Denzel Bentley. It's been a tough few months. I shouldn't say a few years, because he's beaten Denzel Bentley in that time and become British champion. But yeah, it's been a rough little ride in the last couple fights for Nathan Heaney, and all the best to him. I mean, he's got a loyal fan base. I'm sure that they'll stick with him, and you know, I think we've kind of seen his level now anyway. It's not a disgraceful level. I think he's still well in place to still be chief support on some cards and stuff like that. But will he be headlining, big shows in the UK? Probably not. But again, I think he's a good addition to undercards, and I think he'll always be in decent fights as well. He's always in good fights, Nathan Heaney. Credit though again to the opponent, Sofian Kati. Hadn't heard of him at all prior to this fight being made, and he sprung a big upset there. Hopefully he gets something big next. That though brings the review part to a close. It's now time to welcome this week's special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former WBA Bantamweight World Champion. It is, of course, Nina Hughes. Nina, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure having you, Nina. So we last spoke back in March, so almost a year ago. At the time, you were getting ready to fight Cherneka Johnson. Let's obviously start with that. Looking back now, just talk me through the actual fight itself, just the fight part. How do you assess it looking back now?
Assessing it, I've watched it back several times. It was a close competitive fight, but I still believe I won the fight, and in there I believed I was winning. I scored it back 7-3, 6-4, maybe closest to myself. I just thought I was the busier, landed more punches, and that my arm should have been raised where it was, but
it was changed. We'll get to that. When we actually spoke in that interview, I actually mentioned to you if you were concerned about the judging. You kind of said, you're always a bit concerned about the judging, but what can you do? I can only do my job. That 98-92 card, unbelievably terrible, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? Even the close cards, if you look at the way they scored it, it was just blatant cheating, because the first 2 rounds I won clearly, like they wasn't even close. Like if you give the close rounds to her, then I understand it more. But the first 2 rounds I won so clearly that those 2 judges still give it to her. And then it's like they start giving me rounds later on once they know she's winning to try and even it out to make the scores closer. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, God. Yeah, because that's what I mean. Those early rounds on a scorecard, they're so important because obviously you can do...
it was impossible that I lost the first 2 rounds. So, but yeah, it is what it is.
But obviously, the judges, as you say, you feel it was blatant cheating from the judges. They certainly got it wrong. But the MC, as we know, had an absolute mare. What a crazy way to mess things up. Obviously, for those that don't know, I'm sure that people listening do know. But he announces you as the winner. You celebrate. Then he goes, "Oh, hang on, wait a minute," and the new. How did it feel? Well, I know I could kind of see the expression on your face at the time, but how did it feel to be celebrating, defending your title successfully away from home, all that way in Australia, and then have it taken away from you in seconds?
Yeah, obviously it was heartbreaking, and it was just such a shock. No one explained to us what had happened. No one said to us, "Oh, the ring announcer announced it wrong." Like, they just changed it while we was in the ring. So when you don't even know what's going on. And then as soon as they started announcing the scores again, I just thought there's only one reason they can do it, is changing it. I had no idea why they was doing it, but yeah, I just knew that they was changing the decision for some weird reason. And then they come back to me trying to interview me, and I'm like, I had no idea what had even just happened. I was lost for words.
It was horrible to watch, even on the TV. I think obviously at the time things were heated, emotions were high. Do you still think it was, corruption or just a horrible mistake, Nina?
I don't know. Yeah, there's so many little things that like you read into and you look into, and I don't know. Maybe I think the judges were corrupt, because whether he announced it right or wrong, that doesn't justify how the judges scored it. Yeah. So in that way, that's corrupt. I said in some ways, like, whether he announced it right or wrong doesn't change how the judges score it. So, because he apologised to me afterwards in the bar, and I was like, it doesn't actually make any difference if you announced it right or wrong. If you announced it right first time, then they've still cheated me of what I don't believe was right, the way the judges scored it. So it's one of them.
Oh man, it's so true what you're saying though. Obviously, it doesn't matter so much that he got it wrong. The cards were what they were, but just that feeling of complete happiness to complete devastation in such a short space of time was horrible. The rematch. Firstly, I wouldn't mind betting that there was probably a time where you thought we're probably not going to get this rematch.
Yeah, well, I knew, because we appealed to the WBA. About the controversial scoring, and the WBA got neutral judges from all around the world to rejudge my fight, and the majority had me winning. So they then made me mandatory for the fight. But originally, the deal was whoever won that fight had to fight the mandatory, which was Jamie Mitchell at the time, and then I got the winner. But then that fight never happened for whatever reason. So now I'm mandatory. But yeah, they've recognised the bad result and made me mandatory, so I'm faithful to the WBA.
Even still, though, did the thought cross your mind that maybe Cherneka might just say, "No, I don't really fancy it anyway"?
Well, she couldn't. She'd have to give up the belt, otherwise there's no way she could get out of it. But the business side of it did drag on for so long. Obviously, it's the cost and paying for it and finding a show to put it on. So that side of it has dragged on longer than obviously we wanted, but it's finally, even though I've got to go back to Australia, we've finally got the rematch.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, obviously, how does it feel to finally get it signed and announced?
Yeah, it's a relief in the end, because it's just been such a long time waiting. I've been in the gym, basically, a little rest after her, but basically since the last fight, with like potential dates maybe happening that haven't quite materialised. So finally it's crossed the line.
And yeah, like we say, it's finally happening, March 22nd, back in Australia. I have to ask again, do you have, I'm sure you've got concerns about going back there now.
Of course, but it is what it is. What can I do? I've demanded neutral judges this time. So I just have to hope that the judges are fair. That's all I can ask for.
And Nina, should you get your revenge, are we likely to see a third fight?
No, I doubt it, because I believe I won the first one anyway.
Yeah, no.
And I was always giving her the opportunity. She was never my mandatory. She was never. So no, it wouldn't ever make sense. Not unless the money's there. Money talks.
Yeah, of course. I'm saying it's still a bit of history to the fight. Do you feel that you need to do anything different in this second fight, Nina? If so, what? Or if not, why?
I'm just going to make it as clear as possible so that, I've just got to go in there and do what I did last time, but even better.
And is there any concerns, obviously, with it's not been an ideal layoff for you? I know that you look about 21, but, fact of the matter is you're not. Is there any concerns with that?
No, obviously it's not ideal. I wanted to be as active as possible, but if anything, I'm feeling better in the gym. I'm still improving. I feel like I'm feeling fitter. I'm feeling stronger. So I'm feeling a lot more even confident. I'm still improving. That's the main thing. So I expect a good performance.
And then my last real question for you, Nina, should you get this win, I know we touched on it just briefly and I said about a possible third fight, but what would be on your mind next, or is it too early to tell just yet?
I mean, look, my full focus is in this fight because without this win, anything else isn't there. But since I won that world title, I achieved my goal, and the next step, I always wanted the unification fights. They've never been able to be made, but yeah, that was always a dream, is to unify. So that would always be the next dream if it could happen.
Hopefully it's a big year for you, this one. Just before we wrap things up, Nina, if you've got any closing words to the listeners, like I say, I think it's the third time that we've had you on. It's always great having you on. And it's been 11 months because of the inactivity, sadly. Otherwise, we would have had you on sooner.
I just thank everyone for their support and bring back 2-time world champion.
There we go. Listen, Nina, I want to thank you for your time. Best of luck March 22nd, and hopefully, as you say, next time we speak, I'll be talking to a 2-time WBA Bantamweight champion of the world.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. We're going to start here, March the 22nd. We did just speak to one of the members of the undercard, but the main event is going to be George Kambosos Jr., friend of the show, former undisputed lightweight world champion. He'll be boxing in a homecoming against Daud Yordan, who I think is a former opponent of Anthony Crolla, I want to say. That one to be going down live on DAZN. Also on that card, like we say, is the rematch between Nina Hughes and Cherneka Johnson, and also on the card a really interesting fight between Sky Nicholson and Tiara Brown. That's going to be quite special. There's been a lot of talk out of the States about how good Tiara Brown is. This is her opportunity to announce herself on that world stage. What else do we have? Sebastian Fundora, the Towering Inferno, he's back on March the 22nd, so the same date as that card just there. It's going to be live on Prime Video, Saturday, March 22nd in Las Vegas. He'll be taking on top contender Chordell Booker. Also on that card as well, Jesus Ramos Jr. back out in action against Kevin Salgado, and a couple of other fights, I believe, to be made on that one. Again, the date for that, March 22nd. And obviously the groundbreaking news that Queensberry and Frank Warren have signed an exclusive broadcast deal with DAZN. So DAZN really is going to be the place to be for boxing fans. And, they're going to be showing cards from Golden Boy, from Frank Warren, and from Matchroom Boxing, alongside, obviously, a few small hall shows. But yeah, the first show that Frank Warren will be doing on DAZN is going to be Joe Joyce against Dillian White. That is going to be the 5th of April. A couple good fights on the undercard as well, like Richard Riakporhe against Lawrence Okoli. Also, we're going to be seeing Anthony Kakachi on May the 10th defending his world title against Lee Wood. So yeah, that's going to be a good fight there as well. Again, May the 10th for that. So 2 shows so far announced for DAZN from Queensbury. Moving on then to the preview part of the show. Let's start here tomorrow, Friday the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, at the Madison Square Garden Theatre in New York, USA. You're going to have to close off your plans early that day, Eddie, and get home and stick ESPN Plus on. I'm sure the wife will be happy. We have on this card Nico Ali Walsh 10-1 back in a 6-rounder against Juan Carlos Guerra Jr., who is 5-1-1. We also have return to the ring for prospect Abdullah Mason, 16-0, coming off that win last time out in which he was down a couple of times in the first round, I believe it was. What a crazy performance that was. He's back against Manuel James, who is 16-2 with a draw. That's an 8-rounder there. Vito Mielnicki Jr., 20-1, stepping in with 21-0 Connor Coyle. Rohan Polanco, 14-0, stepping in with Juan Carlos Torres, 22-1. I really like Rohan Polanco. That's a 10-rounder there at welterweight. Also, the return to the ring for Jared Big Baby Anderson, 17-1, friend of the show, back in a 10-rounder here. He hasn't boxed since being stopped to Martin Bacoli, so it's going to be interesting to see him back in the ring, and he steps in with Marios Collias, who's 12-3 with a draw. Can't say I'd heard of him when this fight got made. A little look into his record, he's been stopped just the one time, and it was on his pro debut back in 2014. He was stopped in a round against a guy who was 0-1. Since then, though, hasn't really done too much. A lot of the guys he's beaten have had like 2 or 3 fights. He's beaten a couple of debutants. He's got a win over a guy who was 12-0 called Felix Langberg. That is his best win in terms of, what's on paper. But yeah, hasn't done much, hasn't really boxed many guys, but he does have 10 KOs from his 12 victories. He's a 6'3.5", 33-year-old Swedish national, I believe. But anyway, Greek national living in Sweden. All the best to Jared Big Baby Anderson. I think we're going to see a stoppage in that one there. We've also got return to the ring for Xander Zayas, who I think has now probably gone from prospect to contender, 20-0, back in a 10-rounder against also 20-0, identical record, Slava Spoma. Slava Spoma of Germany. I remember him boxing a few months back against Milan Pratt. That's always a name that stuck out to me. Was able to take Milan Pratt's back in October 2023. And then the main event, it's a really juicy one. Denis Baranchyk, who we've obviously seen prove his mettle. He was the guy that Emmanuel Navarrete stepped up in weight to attempt to, fight and beat and become a champion at 140, but was unsuccessful. So again, we've seen him prove his mettle. Baranchyk defeating Emmanuel Navarrete, who was on a heck of a run. But anyway, Baranchyk steps in with, for me, one of the most impressive fighters in world boxing in recent times, Keyshawn Davis. So a defense here of Barancyk's WBO lightweight world title. Keyshawn Davis 12-0. There's been a little bit of unsavoury shenanigans actually in the build up to this one, Eddie, which is a bit of a shame. Keyshawn Davis is turning into quite the trash talker, which I don't always like to see, especially when Baranchyk doesn't speak a word of English. He got right in his face and started trash talking to him at the media stuff this week. But it gets worse than that. Keyshawn Davis in his hotel room was apparently sent a delivery from Barancyk's team, and the delivery consisted of a handwritten message with a biro. They wrote some kind of message in broken English, something, about I hope you're prepared for the fight, something like that, and then they sent him a bunch of bananas. Keyshawn has then perceived that as, a racial thing, and he says now it's definitely personal. So we don't like to see that. I don't know what Baranchyk was trying to imply there. People are saying it maybe wasn't sent from him. It could have been a team member. It could have just been completely made up just to create a few headlines. I don't know, but there's no place for that in the sport whatsoever. But the fight itself should be a really good one, Eddie, going off both guys. Both undefeated, obviously, as well.
Yeah. I think sometimes that trash talk and the things that go along with it can be a little bit much. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I've never had a situation where I was at a press conference where things went left like that, like where, somebody's in my face and we're going back and forth. The closest thing I had was to that was when I fought Gerald Washington. And to be honest, when we squared off, we were talking, but it wasn't anything negative. It was like, man, this is just business. Good luck to you and blah, blah, blah. But we were talking back and forth. It kind of could give the vibe that maybe there was some trash talk going back and forth, but it wasn't. And for some reason, because of, the person I am, you would think somebody would be ready just to pick with me or to start something with me because I don't have that kind of persona or personality. And I've been at fights and fighting against guys who would easily just, run their mouth. But for some reason with me, it was always a good level of respect. So when I see these types of things happen, and then obviously the whole thing with Baranchik, supposedly sending bananas to him and all of that, now bringing, racism into it, it starts to shed a negative outlook on the sport itself to a degree, because we're obviously already fighting. To me, we don't need too much more shit going on. Sorry, excuse my French. We're already fighting. I think it's enough. You understand what I'm saying? I don't think we need to, start going throwing out racial slurs, getting in guys' faces, spitting at people, swinging at people. I understand, because I've been in camps before where you didn't see your family for, months, and you got this one guy on your mind, and he's, holding you back from, doing some of the things you might want to do, and all that, whatever you use for motivation. But at the end of the day, I think we should all keep it more professional. And, you see trash talk in other sports, and I would say rarely does it, sometimes I think rarely does it look like certain boxing press conferences. I've seen, different people talk a little trash, like the basketball players, the football players, they talk trash, but it never really turns physical, nor does it really get too out of hand, and in those sports, they have like a players association, and, they're a part of one particular association. So, they're reprimanded about things if things go left. So, that I think boxing needs to look a little more into that so we can keep stuff like this down. You know what I mean? Because like I said, it really just doesn't make the sport look good. But aside from all that crap that is going on, this looks like a really good and interesting fight. And for Keyshawn Davis, I want to say, obviously, it's a step up. Obviously he's fighting for a title against a guy who's a legit threat. So, we thought his last fight with what was the guy's name, Joe? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. He fought somebody that Richardson Hitchin fought.
God.
Lemos.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and everybody expected him to be such a serious threat because, most people thought he gave Richardson Hitchens a loss, but, it didn't happen. So, but he looked good and demolished him in a round or two. So, that's a good thing. But this, I still think, is a step from that. It's obviously a world title fight, uncharted territory at this point for him. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think there needs to be, like I said, a little more respect given. But sometimes it's good when you see that animosity to a degree. Sometimes, to see the young fighter or just the fighters in general not going to give them too much respect. Because you sometimes see guys get into fights and then, the fight's not living up to what it could because, you got a little bit too much respect in there. You know what I mean? So that part is good. It makes the fight more interesting. It sells the fight a little better. Some animosity in these stories. I don't 100% believe it, but whatever it takes to sell a fight, it's going to be a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. But I didn't need all this other shit to make me look forward to it, just to say, just saying. But yeah, looking forward to the fight. I like Keyshawn Davis, and I think if he wins this title, it'll be a good situation, for some fight, some upcoming fights in the future for him.
Yeah, again, should be a great fight. I really look forward to, Friday night boxing, especially when there's Saturday night boxing as well, and both shows don't clash. That is what we're going to be getting this weekend. So, yeah, really looking forward to that Friday night card there. I'll be staying up late to watch it live, and yeah, that really is my Valentine. A bit of boxing on the Friday night. Keyshawn Davis, one of my favourite fighters to watch. It's going to be a good fight. Both men can box, both men can fight, and we're probably going to see a little bit of a mix of that. But you'd have to favour Keyshawn with the ride he's on at the minute. Having said that, Berenchyk shouldn't be overlooked at all. This is a big step up for Keyshawn. He hasn't boxed at this level yet as a pro. Berenchyk has. So there you go. Could be interesting. Moving now then to the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester. Again, this is where the Chisora fight card took place last week, but we're back here this week. It is on DAZN. We have on the undercard Pat McCormack, 6-0 in a 10-rounder, stepping up in level against Robbie Davies Jr., friend of the show, now 24-5. His best days are well and truly behind him. Again, you'd expect Pat McCormack to win this fight, probably by stoppage even. Zelfa Barrett, 31-2, back in a 10-rounder against friend of the show Jazza Dickens, 34-5. Again, you'd have to favour Zelfa Barrett here, but this could steal the show. This could be fight of the night. We know that Jazza Dickens is a tough guy, always comes to give it a good go, and he's not going to lie down. I like Zelfa Barrett's style. I've always liked the way he boxes. I actually enjoy his style a lot. But yeah, again, it could be a good fight because there will be times where both men have to probably tough it out a little bit. I think that Zelfa Barrett might just be a little bit too sharp for Jazza Dickens is probably the word. I think he's just going to have a little bit too much for him, probably a little extra gear. But will he stop him? I'm not entirely sure. You probably have to lean towards maybe. But yeah, Jazza Dickens isn't going to lie down, and it's going to be fun to watch, I think, while it lasts. But yeah, I don't want to see Jazza Dickens just getting picked off. Also on the card, this is a fight that I've been looking forward to for a long time now, because obviously the first one fell through on fight day. Reece Bellotti finally gets this rescheduled fight. He's 19-5. He's stepping in with Michael Gomez Jr., 21-1. That one for the British and Commonwealth super featherweight titles. So happy that we are getting it. I remember Reece Bellotti when they told him that he wasn't fighting when he was in the dressing room at the arena, and he was fuming at Michael Gomez Jr. He came out and gave a live interview on the TV, and he couldn't stop effing and blinding and saying how he felt that Michael Gomez had completely become terrified and didn't want the fight. And I'm putting it very politely. You go back and watch that live. They kept telling him he needed to calm down because it was a live broadcast. He gave a seriously honest account of things, and he did not hold back. It was great TV. I've always been a fan of Reece Bellotti, another guy who is well underappreciated in British boxing. I don't think he's big on social media, which I think lets him down a little bit, but he's had a great run in recent times, and I would definitely consider him the favourite here. I'm just hoping that it goes well for him, because he really wanted to fight last time, and I could see how heartbroken he was. And the main event, again, it's going to probably go the distance. It's going to potentially be boring at times because both guys are master boxers really, but I would probably say there's only one master. The other one's just a boxer, a decent level boxer. Jack Catterall being the master boxer, 30-1, friend of the show, coming off that win last time against Regis Prograis. Doesn't seem like too long ago that fight took place, really. He's back out, and funny enough, Regis Prograis was scheduled to fight this weekend but pulled out of his fight, unfortunately. So anyway, they were both going to be boxing on the same weekend. Jack Catterall, 30-1. It's for the vacant WBO interim super lightweight world title. It's over 12 rounds. He steps in with America's undefeated 31-0 Arnold Barboza Jr. Arnold Barboza Jr., you know, again, sometimes you see him fight and you say, yeah, he's quite a special fighter, but then there's other times where he looks pretty average. He is coming off a good win last time against Jose Ramirez, and I backed him to win that fight. He was the underdog there. He upset the odds. But the fight before that, when he boxed Sean McComb, he clearly lost. They gave him a gift decision, and I don't think Sean McComb is a world-level fighter or even a fringe world-level fighter. So that was very worrying. He's stepping in with a very, very clever southpaw in Jack Catterall, who, for all intents and purposes, is probably at the most confident he's ever felt in terms of, you know, his career. He's very confident. His self-confidence is probably sky high, avenging the Josh Taylor defeat and obviously beating Prograis, dropping Prograis in his last fight. And also the fact that Sean McComb is a southpaw and gave Barboza way too many issues, and you'd have to say that Jack Catterall is a better and smarter southpaw than Sean McComb. So I can't see any way Jack Catterall loses this fight. I think it's going to be good while it lasts, and it will probably be Jack Catterall on points. That would be my pick, and that will be where the smart money goes. It's not like that's a Einstein pick. Everyone will be thinking that. I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on that, Eddie, before we go to the final card to mention, which is another very small one.
I don't know too much about Arnold Barboza. I haven't seen him fight much, but Jack Catterall is a good boxer. Heard some things about Barboza. I need to do my homework a little bit more on him before the fight, so I can see a little bit more, so I can make an honest prediction right now. I mean, I just know of Catterall, and I know what he's been able to do and how well he did with Josh Taylor, and just in general, you know, he's a pretty solid boxer, especially the southpaw, man. He's just a problem. So, and you know, obviously with Regis Prograis as well. Yeah. So I can't really give too much of a prediction on what I think will happen as far as like how these guys match up. But if I had to, you know, like you said, smart money would definitely put it on Catterall because of the experience, the skill level, and who's been tested more and come out on top 9 times out of 10. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to actually try to get a little more information on Barboza before I actually watch the fight.
And moving now to the final card to mention. This one goes down at the Honda Center in California, USA. It's going to be live on DAZN. It's an Oscar De La Hoya Golden Boy Promotions card. We were going to be getting Oscar Duarte against Regis Prograis. Obviously, like I said, Prograis had to pull out. And Oscar Duarte still fights. He steps in with the very tough Miguel Madueno, 31-3. Listeners may remember Madueno because he recently boxed Keyshawn Davis. And yeah, Keyshawn couldn't get him out of there, but he took a hell of a beating and didn't stop trying. So he's a very, very tough guy. 31-3 with 28 KOs. He can really bang himself as well. And obviously never been stopped. Oscar Duarte, on the other hand, 28-2 with a draw. Again, very tough. Both these guys are similar in styles, you know, both very tough, both can punch, and both like a war. So this is probably going to be a really interesting and fan-friendly fight. Obviously, Duarte lost to Ryan Garcia in his most recent loss, but then right off the back of that was able to beat Joseph Jojo Diaz. And Madueno, well, I already kind of said his story. He's lost 2 of his last 3, but you know, he's a tough guy and will bring it. Also on that card as well, friend of the show, Kenny Sims Jr., 21-2 with a draw. He's back in a 10-rounder against Kendo Castaneda, who's 21-7. All the best there to Kenny Sims. That then brings the preview part to a close. The final thing for me to do is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 486 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A massive shout out to this week's special guest, the former WBA Bantamweight Female World Champion. Of course it is the very, very delightful Nina Hughes. All the best to her in her rematch, March 22nd, not too long to go now, out there in Australia. There has been one piece of news break whilst we've been recording the show, and it's that we are actually getting the rematch, believe it or not, between Ben Whittaker and Liam Cameron. It's a fight that I wasn't too sure we would see again. We saw how controversial the ending was to the first fight, the injury, both guys going over the ropes. It's great that we're getting the rematch, that one to take place in Birmingham on the 20th of April, Easter Sunday. And on the undercard, we're going to be seeing Lee Cutler, who's coming off a good win last time against Stephen McKenna. He's getting in with friend of the show, Sam Egginton. We're also going to see Tyler Denny back in action against Elvis Ahorga, who just fought Callum Simpson. And also, last but not least, Fraser Clark returning to the ring following his stoppage defeat to Fabio Wardley. He steps in with Ebenezer Tete, who just gave Dillian White a decent fight in Gibraltar. Yeah, that one again goes down on April the 20th. That is about everything now from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we'll see you all again same time next week.